The Pentagon orders a stand-down of strategic bombers and some ballistic missiles. And President Gorbachev hails the American move, but does not immediately match it. This is the CBS Evening News. Bob Schieffer reporting. Good evening. For the first time in decades, the bombers of the Strategic Air Command were taken off alert today, the first sign of the historic changes the president ordered last night when he announced a sweeping proposal to cut the nuclear arsenal. Much of our broadcast tonight is about the day-after reaction to the president's speech, and we begin at the Pentagon, where top military officials filled in many of the details of what the president outlined last night. Jim Stewart has our report.
All U.S. strategic bombers, plus 450 nuclear-armed Minuteman missiles in 3 Midwestern states, were taken off alert this afternoon, part of the Pentagon's compliance with President Bush's bold gambit to speed up superpower disarmament.
We now have an unparalleled opportunity to change the nuclear posture of both the United States and the Soviet Union.
Highlights of the president's announcement included withdrawal and destruction of all 1,300 U.S. ground-launched tactical nuclear weapons now in Europe, removal of all tactical nuclear weapons from U.S. warships and naval aircraft, and formal cancellation of 2 strategic nuclear missile systems already doomed by Congress.
It's a massive step, and it's a tremendous gamble because there is no way of knowing whether the Soviets will reciprocate.
Why now? The Pentagon says, frankly, it doesn't fear a Soviet sneak attack any longer and thinks the Kremlin will face facts and join in the cuts.
Given their collapsing economy, they really have no choice but to significantly cut back on their military capabilities.
The cuts will barely dent the U.S. nuclear arsenal in any event, leaving untouched more than 1,000 other ICBM missiles and the entire Trident missile submarine fleet, all organized under a new strategic command at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha. And while ground-launched tactical weapons are being destroyed, hundreds of nuclear bombs and missiles for U.S. and NATO aircraft will remain in Europe.
The world has changed, but insurance is still a good idea. And under this plan, we believe we will have enough.
Plus, the weapons being stored under today's orders can be up and running in less than 24 hours. And most weren't needed anyway, the Pentagon concedes, because of the superior accuracy of conventional weapons like the ones used against Iraq.
We can now do conventionally, much more efficiently, things we thought we could only do with tactical nuclear weapons.
In short, the president appears to have made both a bold and a practical decision. By getting rid of some of the older weapon systems that were going to be destroyed anyway, and by canceling others that were never going to get funded, he appears to offer the Soviets an unprecedented incentive to follow his lead. Bob?
Thank you, Jim. After last night's big speech, the president squeezed in a day off today as he and Mrs. Bush made a sentimental trip to Sea Island, Georgia, where they once spent their honeymoon. Randall Pinkston has our report from there.
Thanks for the welcome.
An upbeat President Bush received a warm welcome as he arrived at this seaside resort a day after announcing sweeping reductions in U.S. nuclear forces. So far, the initiative is receiving generally favorable reviews from both sides of the congressional aisle.
The United States now has conventional superiority over the Soviet Union. Therefore, the things that the president proposed last night make perfectly good sense from a national security standpoint.
It was a challenge to the Soviets, and I think it was good news to the Soviet Union. Let's face it, they're having all kinds of economic problems. The last thing they need to do is tie up a lot of the money they have in trying to catch up to us.
But some Democrats argue the president is eliminating weapons that the U.S. doesn't need anyway, and charge he is only now catching up to what some critics have been suggesting for years.
Most of the elements of this speech were previously called for in Congress, in NATO, on the part of our other allies, and the president, to that extent, is playing catch-up with events.
Other Democrats are already calling for deeper cuts in defense spending, with the savings to be channeled into programs at home.
I would say in this environment, with these cuts, the collapse of communism, now's our turn. Now's our chance.
But in his address last night, the president cautioned against counting on a windfall peace dividend.
In the near term, some of these steps may even cost money. Given the ambitious plan I have already proposed to reduce U.S. defense spending by 25%, we cannot afford to make any unwise or unwarranted cuts in the defense budget
The president began considering the notion of partial nuclear disarmament about a month ago, shortly after the Soviet coup failed. Mr. Bush was looking for a gesture that would encourage the reform movement and, if possible, motivate the Soviet central government to destroy some of its nuclear arms. With this new initiative, Mr. Bush has not only demonstrated a deft hand at superpower politics, but at least for the time being, he has also deflected criticism from Democrats who are trying to paint him as a do-nothing on domestic issues. Bob?
Thank you, Randall. As expected, Soviet President Gorbachev went on television this morning and praised the president's message, but he said his government wants to study it for a while before it offers a response. Anthony Mason has a report on that from Moscow.
The Soviets were not yet ready to offer reciprocal cuts in nuclear weapons today, but President Gorbachev called the Bush plan a major breakthrough. In remarks on Soviet television, Gorbachev said, "Our assessment is positive, very positive." But the proposals, he added, would need more study. With the conservative generals ousted in the aftermath of the coup, the new younger command is expected to be more receptive to military cutbacks.
Everybody's aware that it's necessary, that the cost of maintaining these colossal arsenals, quite apart from research and development costs, are crippling not only the country but also the military themselves.
And the ailing Soviet economy could certainly use the extra cash.
There are so many social needs which require funds, things like education, health, things like modernization of the infrastructure. But above all, perhaps there is a more acute need to cut government spending in order to deal with the budget deficit.
In this new atmosphere, Soviet forces are already playing a new role. In Moscow today, 12,000 troops were deployed to face a more benign American threat, heavy metal rock and roll. Western groups, the Black Crowes, Metallica, and AC/DC, performed a free concert for 1 million fans. Billed as a gift to the young people who lined the barricades during the attempted coup, the enthusiasm was ballistic. If Presidents Bush and Gorbachev do agree on disarmament, perhaps the only weapon Soviets and Americans fire at each other will be the kind that closed tonight's concert. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Moscow.
The Bush cuts would affect more than 300 U.S. sea-based tactical missiles, some of them deployed on warships in the Persian Gulf. Barry Peterson visited one of the ships, and here is his report.
Aboard the USS Arkansas are the Tomahawk cruise missiles that would be prohibited from carrying nuclear warheads under the president's proposal. The Tomahawks, with conventional warheads, successfully pounded Iraq during the war. And even if the nuclear warheads end up in storage, the conventional firepower on ships like this would stay.
Yeah, 057.
Firepower that might once again be aimed at Iraq if tensions flare in the Gulf.
You try not to think about it. If you think about it, you'll just end up getting an ulcer or going crazy. You try to keep your mind on what you're doing, your job, and what's going on.
The Arkansas has spent weeks in the northern part of the Gulf dodging not space-age missiles, but old-fashioned mines, some dating back to World War II.
The whole idea of keeping us ready, keeping the edge on, keeping us interested in what we're doing, I think, is just a reminder that, hey, you can be shipped home in a box.
The crew keeps track of political events in the area, knowing it may affect them directly. And the latest series of standoffs has some on edge.
I was hoping, they'd kind of cool it down a little bit so we wouldn't have to get into anything over here.
I'd like to go home on time, see the family. But if you got to have war to keep peace, got to do that.
Navy officials are making it clear that their ships and their crews are ready for whatever turns out.
Certainly one of the possibilities, although it may be remote, is some sort of a terrorist attack or perhaps a paramilitary attack by Iraqis.
Hi, Mom! For the moment, it's time for a little R&R on a short leash. Cinderella Liberty. They have to be back by midnight. Barry Peterson, CBS News in the Persian Gulf.
And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, UN inspectors sort through their hard-won documents on the Iraqi nuclear program. We're going to talk with Senator Richard Lugar about the American nuclear stand-down, and Jacqueline Adams will tell us about the new boom in storytelling. There's big money, all taken.
Willie ran to the backyard.
He fought the storm as long as he could.
There's nowhere else to go. There is a place where the lost can find refuge.
Storm really nailed this little guy.
It's SeaWorld, an Anheuser-Busch company. Here they've rescued thousands of marine animals and returned them to the sea. 251 in the last year alone.
This guy looks pretty beat up. I didn't think he'd make it when he first came in. His name, we called him George. He was great.
This program, though, is just one of the many Anheuser-Busch supports to preserve wildlife. Why do we do this? Because we believe the world we share is only given to us in trust. The continuing Anheuser-Busch commitment to preserving wildlife as our pledge and promise to you. And to the Georges of the world.
Ford Motor Company. Profiles in quality. Teamwork.
We work good as a team here on a job like this where all four of us can work together. That's what I said in '82. And today, teamwork is more important than ever.
Our paint job is only as good as a primer coat.
My primer coat's only as good as the body prep.
My body prep starts with a quality body panel. Together,
our goal is to build the highest quality cars and trucks in the world.
At Ford, quality is job one.
The architect of the Allied air war against Iraq left today for Bahrain in the Persian Gulf. General Charles Horner is the Central Command's top Air Force commander. The exact purpose of his visit has not been announced. Gulf tensions and prospects of further military action against Iraq eased a bit today with the end of the Baghdad standoff over UN nuclear inspectors. Peter Van Zandt with that.
Carrying the documents which reportedly contain secret information of Iraq's nuclear weapons program, 44 United Nations inspectors this morning were finally allowed to leave their parking lot detention camp. The team spent today cataloging the sensitive documents, a concession to the Iraqis which helped end the standoff.
Those documents help expand our knowledge, our capability to carry out inspections of the Iraqi nuclear program, and eventually a long-term compliance and monitoring regime.
The crisis began Tuesday after the UN team refused to turn over documents seized during a surprise inspection. Iraqi troops surrounded the inspectors, raising tensions to a level not seen since the end of the Gulf War. The inspectors spent the next 5 days in the hot sun, communicating with the outside world with a portable satellite telephone. Their uncensored reports helped turn world opinion quickly against the Iraqis.
It was very worth it. We all felt very strongly about it. The reason David could say after 5 days living in a parking lot that it was enjoyable was partly because of the team, the character of the team, the quality.
Despite looking exhausted after their ordeal, the inspectors say they will continue gathering evidence to show the world just how close Saddam Hussein came to producing a nuclear bomb. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, London.
After months of repairs, Kuwait University finally reopened today. For thousands of students, the Iraqis looted the library and laboratories during their occupation of the emirate.
It melts, it pours, it cooks just right. Less fat, great taste, Velveeta light. So rich, so smooth is every bite. That's why you'll love Velveeta light. All this exquisite taste and looks and mountability. It's got 1/3 less fat and low cholesterol. Cook with a lighter look tonight. With new Velveeta light.
I think I'll make fresh dressing.
Good seasons?
Mm-hmm.
Which oil?
Pick a light one.
Dressing's great.
Good seasons, you make it fresh, you make it best.
You know, there's nothing square about prunes. These Sunsweet pitted prunes are not only irresistibly sweet and bursting with flavor, they're also perfectly round. Only one prune tastes Sunsweet.
I'm alive, Jeff Hashimoto.
I'm alive, Rhonda Williamson.
I'm alive, Sonia Schofield.
I'm alive, Howard Weber.
Want to get more out of life?
I'm alive, Jessica Weber.
Get airbags. See your Allstate agent for a list of cars with airbags.
We're alive.
Secretary of State James Baker said today he is pleased the Palestine Liberation Organization has decided to back a Middle East peace conference, but he said more work is still needed to ensure that all parties show up at the conference. We have more on the PLO decision now from Alan Pizzi.
The Palestinian Parliament in Exile's endorsement of the U.S.-sponsored peace plan was something of a triumph for PLO leader Yasser Arafat. Hardliners fought it, but the document the Palestinian leadership approved all but commits the PLO to the peace conference. The council also dropped its insistence that the PLO name its own delegates to any peace talks and cleared the way for Palestinian representatives to attend as part of a joint delegation with Jordan. More than half of Jordan's population are Palestinians, many of whom have spent their lives as refugees. They look to the PLO as their only legitimate representatives. Israel won't recognize that stand and refuses to sit down at talks with what it terms the terrorist PLO. The Algiers meeting tried to dispel that image by purging its executive ranks of Abu Abbas, organizer of the Achille Lauro cruise ship hijacking and other terrorist attacks. Yasser Arafat even managed to praise President Bush. He claimed Mr. Bush referred to Palestinians as having political rights and called that a courageous stand. The Palestinians' decision to press ahead towards peace talks was apparently taken because all but the radicals recognize this may be their last chance to win back any part of the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip and form a homeland they can call Palestine. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Amman.
Protesters today blocked the doors of a clinic in Chicago that provides abortions. Led by a Baptist pastor, the anti-abortion protesters prevented some women from entering. Police made at least 28 arrests, said there were no reports of violence.
The old double suitcase trip. Well, you can never be too smart when traveling on business. So grab a phone, call your travel agent, and you can stay at any of 2,500 choice hotels absolutely free. Would you believe up to 30% off?
Call your travel agent or 1-800-4CHOICE to save 10 to 30% with Choice Hotels corporate rates.
You're not going to believe what happened.
You're right. I'm not.
You don't believe your own brother? Come on. I'm really sorry I'm late.
Late? We're having coffee.
Taster's choice. Just in time.
Well, no, I think you know everyone except...
We've already met.
We, share the same taste in coffee.
Savor the sophisticated taste of Taster's Choice.
Are you always this late?
I won't be tomorrow.
What's happening tomorrow?
I'm inviting you to dinner.
What makes you think I'll accept?
You can't resist my coffee.
To help relieve her heartburn, regular Rolaids uses an aluminum salt, but his antacid is Tums, and Tums has calcium.
Something my body needs anyway. I like that.
Tums.
For our Washington Notebook segment tonight, we're joined in our Washington studio by Indiana Senator Richard Lugar, one of the ranking Republicans on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, Mr. Gorbachev gave the president high praise today, but he said he wanted to hold back before he decides what response to make and what kind of things that what kind of things the Soviets can do. What would you consider a meaningful response?
Well, I suppose the first basic question is how much of a response Mr. Gorbachev can produce. We hope he can produce a lot, but surely he must wonder, given the problems he's had with the military as well as other leaders in the republics, as to what he can produce. But it comes at a time in which clearly Gorbachev and others know that they really want to clean up the mess while they have an opportunity. And clearly the president's decided this is a good opportunity for us to do some house cleaning too. I think reciprocally, both countries have opportunities to go after other situations, other countries that have nuclear weapons or chemical weapon potential to try to stop non-proliferation. And I would think, thirdly, Gorbachev and President Bush both know that deficit reduction of massive amounts is required clearly in the Soviet economy, and I would argue in ours in order to be more competitive. So this is one of these breakthrough times in which public opinion in both the countries is likely to support very bold moves.
Well, you raise an interesting point when you say that no one can be certain, including Mr. Gorbachev, what he can produce in a response. At the top of this broadcast, Richard Pearl, a former Defense Department official, said this is an enormous gamble because you don't know what the Soviets will do. Is it a gamble, do you think?
No, I don't think that it is. Clearly, it would have been perceived as that a short time ago, and I would say the president would have to answer critics who suggest he might have done this 10, 15, or 20 years ago, that really that was not possible for the American people or the rest of the world to understand it until now. But now the targets have changed. The confrontation has clearly changed. We have great liabilities with all of those nuclear shells all over Europe and other places, all sorts of problems in terms of maintenance and the expenses therein. So the move is a sound one in terms of our own military doctrine, quite apart from what Gorbachev does. Clearly, the opportunities for him are enormous to clean up his situation.
Some of your colleagues up on the Hill told me last night that they're a bit disappointed that they didn't know this was coming. They said had they known, they might not have perhaps gone on record for some of the things they voted for recently, knowing that the president was going to cut them unilaterally like this. How widespread is that feeling amongst Republicans?
Oh, I don't think very widespread. No one really knew precisely what the president was going to do. But many people in the Republican Party, as well as the Democratic Party, have pointed to the tactical nuclear problem in Europe for some time. Reports on your network have pointed out that something was going to have to occur there, and clearly now it has. So I don't feel greatly disappointed in the fact that we were not all informed weeks ago.
I have just a very short time, but what will this do to the president's argument that we still need the B-2 bomber?
I would hope it would reinforce it. The president was clear that we need to keep our defenses strong, even while we're cutting them back by 25% or more, and the president has to be given some latitude in making the tough choices as to what we really need.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Lugar. In the Soviet Republic of Georgia today, opponents of the government gave up their guns, and negotiators for both sides prepared for talks to end the violence that has racked the republic. Also today, 2 U.S. embassy officials arrived on a fact-finding mission. Legendary jazz trumpeter Miles Davis has died. He was 65. Doctors at a hospital in Santa Monica, California said he died this morning, suffering from pneumonia, stroke, and respiratory failure. His talent earned him a place among the very best of jazz musicians. Though plagued by illness and addiction for much of his life, Davis was one of the most consistent trendsetters in the history of jazz. Temperamental and flamboyant, he spoke most eloquently through his music.
Have you had your V8 today? Did you know that V8 juice has less than half the calories of that apple?
Wow!
V8 is a nutritious blend of 8 vegetable juices that taste terrific. Have you had your V8 today?
We bake pearls made of denture material in this blueberry pie to prove how powerfully Efferdent, America's leading denture cleanser, removes this tough stain, even in between. Efferdent, stronger than stains.
What does this woman know about dieting that maybe you don't? That you don't have to drink your breakfast, because a serving of Kellogg's Special K actually has fewer calories than a glass of the leading diet shake. In fact, the entire Special K breakfast, including fruit, skim milk, and coffee, has fewer calories than the diet shake. So, if you're going to have something special when you're trying to lose weight, shouldn't it be something special with fewer calories? Kellogg's Special K. Lose the fat.
Craft Caravan Incorporated. Are you having trouble getting an international operator? All Nations Forwarding. Are you having more trouble getting overseas faxes through on the first try? We want you back. AT&T Pro Watts. Competitive prices on international calls. Plus our new Favorite Nation 10% discount. Switch now and get 1 month of long distance free. We want you back. Call 1-800-222-0900.
The National Civil Rights Museum opened today in Memphis, Tennessee, but instead of a ribbon-cutting ceremony, a chain symbolizing slavery was cut. The museum is on the site of the old Lorraine Motel, where civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated 23 years ago. Finally tonight, one of the oldest forms of entertainment is making a fairy tale comeback. Storytelling is hit the big time, and American audiences are being mesmerized by the power of words alone. Jacqueline Adams has our report.
15 years ago, J. O'Callahan was dean of a small liberal arts college, making up stories for his 2 young children.
Tricks! When Willie was 6 years old.
Today, he tells those stories for $3,000 a night.
I was climbing the tree that day. Daddy whistled. Something was up. I ran in the kitchen. What is it? And Daddy said, listen, I'm getting into politics. I'm running for library trustee. Wow!
O'Callahan is a leader in a booming new profession. Thousands of storytellers are performing all across the country.
Come in. And then they said, you know, one of these graves is empty.
In schoolrooms and auditoriums, cruise ships and shopping malls, continuing the ancient tradition of passing on history by word of mouth.
There was Florence Beam in a blue dress. She was coming at me like a double washing machine.
Storytellers say they're filling a void in an increasingly impersonal society.
We're more than the sum total of our filofaxes and our calendars, that we really are people who have personal histories and lives that need to be shared, and we want to know who we are.
They're filling a void that television and Terminators, they say, simply cannot.
And as wonderful as a television or movie is, it's not a person looking you in the eye and changing based on your response. And people are hungry for that thing that's live.
3 minutes she went on, and I went back smiling, but I was burning underneath. I was so angry. She had no right to do that.
For the audience, just listening can be a transforming experience.
It just brought back a lot of memories, and I could feel everything he felt, and I think it was amazing the way he could do that.
We're in a world that is so fast and complicated that strangely imagination is pushed aside. And that's always been one of the delights in being human, using your imagination. It's something we have, it's a gift. Nobody knows it, but the secret beginning of the party is when I light the fire. You ready? About 8:30, 8:45, there'll be so many people dancing in the front hall. I love it with the way they take their coats off. They remind me of the flames. Shh. It's Daddy playing the piano.
Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, Marshfield, Massachusetts.
That's our story. Tomorrow, join Charles Kuralt on Sunday morning. Then we'll see you again on Face the Nation, where our guests will be White House Chief of Staff John Sununu and Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Sam Nunn. I'm Bob Schieffer, CBS News in New York. Good night.
The one that's really mean. The rest of the folks, they just bites when they're hungry. But I bites for the meanness of it. And the whole time he's talking, he's coiling himself around like that, and he's shaking that tail of his, don't. And all the animals, they look around, even bear and lion, all those big animals, they look around and they say, oh, no, you ain't the one we's looking for. That's just your nature. Man's got to go according to his nature. Not you ain't the one we looking for. Don't you worry about it.
The unbeaten Chicago Bears battle the offensive assault of Jim Kelly and the unbeaten Buffalo Bills. Football with a vengeance Sunday.
This is CBS.
Imagine what could happen if people worked together to reach for the stars. Imagine what could happen if whole populations came together in peace to win their freedom. Imagine what could happen if a nation with vision and people with commitment made education a top priority.
Make it happen, America. Invest in education.
When things get tough, remember, Shake and Bake makes it easy to treat your family